On the evening of August 12, 2005, 26-year-old Vanessa Caldwell left her part-time job at a downtown Tulsa bookstore. Vanessa was a college graduate working her way through law school, known for her intelligence, empathy, and dedication to helping others. Outside of work, she volunteered at a local literacy program and spent weekends mentoring underprivileged youth. That Friday evening, she planned to meet a friend for coffee before heading home. She never arrived. Her co-workers became concerned when she failed to show up for her usual closing routine. When attempts to reach her by phone went unanswered, the Tulsa Police Department was alerted. Detective Laura Benson, assigned to the missing persons case, immediately noted that Vanessa's disappearance was out of character. Reliable, methodical, and always communicative, she left no indication she would vanish willingly. The initial investigation faced immediate obstacles. Surveillance cameras in 2005 were limited in number and resolution. Witnesses were sparse, and initial reports mentioned only a dark sedan parked near the bookstore and a shadowy figure moving along the street. The case quickly became a high priority, but leads were scattered, and no concrete evidence of Vanessa's whereabouts surfaced. Vanessa's family, including her parents Marlene and Stephen Caldwell, became the driving force behind community searches. Flyers were distributed, neighborhood canvassing was organized, and local media ran stories highlighting her disappearance. Friends, classmates, and colleagues joined efforts keeping the story alive in local consciousness. Despite these efforts, weeks passed without resolution, and the case slowly cooled, though Detective Benson preserved all evidence meticulously for future re-examination. Years later, Tulsa PD established a cold case unit to revisit unresolved investigations. In 2023, Detective Hannah Porter, recognized for her thorough investigative approach, reopened Vanessa's case. She began by cataloging every note, photograph, and piece of preserved evidence, items previously deemed inconclusive, such as hair samples from the bookstore, fibers collected near a nearby alley, and partial fingerprints, were revisited with modern forensic tools. DNA analysis proved to be the breakthrough. Hair fragments long considered too degraded were successfully sequenced. Partial fingerprints were matched against national databases. Investigators identified Keith Monahan, a man with a criminal history of minor offenses and suspicious behavior in Tulsa during the mid-2000s, as a person of interest. Monahan had lived and worked in proximity to Vanessa's regular route during the week of her disappearance. Witnesses from 2005 were interviewed again, using cognitive techniques designed to enhance recollection decades later. A neighboring cafe employee recalled seeing a man lingering near the alley behind the bookstore just after Vanessa left. Another witness remembered a dark sedan parked suspiciously along the street. Though memories were faint, they aligned with preserved evidence, helping investigators reconstruct Vanessa's final steps. The cold case unit meticulously rebuilt a timeline of August 12, 2005. Vanessa left the bookstore at 7:30 p.m., heading toward her friend's home. Monahan's documented whereabouts, corroborated with employment and utility records, placed him near her path multiple times. Each verified point of contact strengthened the case against him. Investigators examined Monahan's personal spaces, including residences and storage units. Clothing and personal items recovered contained fibers consistent with those found in the alley near the bookstore. Hair fragments matching Vanessa's DNA were discovered on his possessions. Individually, these items appeared minor, but collectively they formed a clear pattern linking Monahan to her disappearance. Interrogation began with strategic precision. Detective Porter presented Monahan with the accumulated evidence: DNA matches, fiber evidence, fingerprints, and corroborated witness statements. Monahan initially denied involvement, claiming any presence near the bookstore was coincidental. Investigators observed his reactions, noting evasions and inconsistencies. Confronted with overwhelming evidence, he admitted to being in the area that evening. Though he attempted to downplay the nature of his interactions, Investigators mapped Monahan's movements alongside Vanessa's reconstructed route. Spatial analysis confirmed intersections aligned with locations where evidence was recovered. This reconstruction allowed prosecutors to present a clear, logical sequence of events in court. Behavioral patterns from Monahan's past, including prior loitering and suspicious conduct, provided additional context to his proximity and actions. Community involvement played a vital role in validating timelines. Friends, neighbors, and former co-workers contributed recollections of Vanessa's daily habits, routines, and demeanor. These insights helped corroborate witness statements and allowed investigators to interpret physical evidence within the context of her life. Rather than treating her solely as an abstraction or case number, all evidence underwent rigorous re-examination. DNA samples were retested to ensure accuracy, fiber matches were verified independently, and fingerprints were analyzed using the latest methods. This meticulous approach guaranteed that each piece could withstand legal scrutiny and cross-examination during the trial. Investigators also analyzed Monahan's communications, work schedule, and personal interactions in the days surrounding Vanessa's disappearance. Each detail was cross-referenced with witness statements and physical evidence, reinforcing the timeline and demonstrating Monahan's opportunity to commit the crime. All findings were organized for prosecutorial review. Visual aids, maps, and chronological reconstructions were prepared to illustrate the sequence of events clearly. The narrative combined scientific evidence with emotional resonance, highlighting the human impact of Vanessa's disappearance and the determination that led to the case being solved. Community support continued to be integral. Local residents, classmates, and friends followed the investigation, organized memorial walks, and maintained awareness. Their vigilance ensured Vanessa's story remained in public memory, emphasizing that persistence could overcome decades of uncertainty. Vanessa's parents played a crucial role in validating the reconstructed timeline. Marlene and Stephen described her typical routines, expected paths, and behaviors, providing critical context for interpreting witness accounts and aligning physical evidence with her likely movements. Their insights emphasized the emotional stakes and kept the investigation centered on Vanessa's life rather than just the crime. Investigators systematically examined alternative explanations for her disappearance. Coincidence, misidentification, or errors in evidence were explored and ruled out. The combination of forensic analysis, eyewitness testimony, and reconstructed timelines created a coherent, compelling narrative. Detective Porter stressed the importance of meticulous documentation and patience. Every note, fiber, and witness statement mattered. Even decades later, they formed the foundation for solving this case, she said. Her dedication exemplified the cold case unit's philosophy: persistence, attention to detail, and the integration of modern forensic methods could bring long-delayed justice. By 2024, the cold case unit had compiled a complete, verified case against Keith Monahan. Every aspect of Vanessa Caldwell's disappearance was reconstructed, corroborated, and ready for legal action. Modern forensic techniques, witness testimony, and behavioral analysis combined to create a compelling case that left little room for doubt. Vanessa's story, once obscured by decades of uncertainty, had been illuminated through science, diligence, and perseverance. Preserved evidence, when re-examined with modern tools, transformed a cold case into a clear pathway to accountability. The narrative combined human impact with scientific precision, ensuring that justice was not only achievable but inevitable. Once Keith Monahan was identified as a person of interest, the cold case unit intensified its investigation. Detective Hannah Porter meticulously reconstructed the night of August 12, 2005, drawing from preserved evidence, witness accounts, and Monahan's documented movements. Though nearly 2 decades had passed, careful preservation of physical items and detailed notes allowed investigators to piece together a precise sequence of events. Monahan's movements were analyzed using employment records, utility bills, and historical location data, Witnesses who had seen him in 2005 were re-interviewed using cognitive interviewing techniques to improve recollection. A cafe employee remembered seeing a tall man near the alley behind the bookstore just after Vanessa left. Another neighbor recalled a dark sedan parked along the street, its driver observing the building. While details had faded, consistency across multiple accounts strengthened the narrative of Monahan's presence near Vanessa. Physical evidence was critical. Fibers collected near the alley matched materials from Monahan's clothing. Hair fragments preserved for decades were successfully sequenced and confirmed to belong to Vanessa. Fingerprints previously considered inconclusive were re-examined and definitively linked Monahan to the rear entrance of the bookstore. Each piece of evidence, while small individually, combined to form a compelling chain connecting him to her disappearance. Investigators examined Monahan's residences and storage units. Items recovered, including clothing and personal effects, contained fibers and traces consistent with those found near Vanessa's last known location. Hair fragments matching her DNA were also discovered, creating a clear physical link. Investigators were careful to document every finding meticulously, ensuring that nothing could be challenged in court. Interrogation was conducted with precision. Detective Porter confronted Monahan with the accumulated evidence: DNA matches, fiber analysis, fingerprints, and corroborated witness accounts. Monahan initially denied involvement, claiming any presence near the bookstore was coincidental. Investigators observed body language, hesitations, and inconsistencies, gradually confronting him with irrefutable evidence. Eventually, he admitted to being near Vanessa that evening, but attempted to minimize his actions. Investigators mapped Monahan's movements alongside Vanessa's reconstructed route, cross-referencing every intersection with recovered evidence. Spatial analysis confirmed multiple points where their paths likely crossed. Behavioral patterns from Monahan's past, including minor offenses and suspicious activity, helped contextualize his presence and actions, providing a fuller picture of the events that night. Community input remained essential. Friends, neighbors, and colleagues provided detailed recollections of Vanessa's routines and personality, helping to validate witness statements and interpret evidence in context. This ensured the investigation focused not only on physical traces, but also on the human impact of her disappearance. All forensic evidence underwent rigorous reanalysis. DNA samples were retested multiple times, fiber matches were independently verified, and fingerprints were carefully examined using modern technology. This meticulous work guaranteed that evidence would withstand the scrutiny of a courtroom, reinforcing the credibility of the investigation. Monahan's activities in the days surrounding August 12, 2005 were also analyzed. Employment records, personal communications, and movements were cross-referenced with witness accounts and physical evidence, confirming opportunities for his involvement. This detailed reconstruction provided investigators with a comprehensive understanding of how events unfolded. The Cold Case Unit organized all findings for prosecutorial review. Visual aids, maps, and chronological reconstructions were prepared to clearly communicate the sequence of events. The narrative emphasized both forensic precision and emotional resonance, highlighting the human impact of Vanessa's disappearance and the relentless determination of those who refused to let the case go cold. Community engagement continued to play a pivotal role. Local residents, classmates, and friends maintained awareness of the investigation, organized memorial events, and contributed any recollections that might assist the case. Their involvement reinforced the persistence required to solve long unsolved cases and emphasized the human dimension of justice. Vanessa's parents, Marlene and Stephen Caldwell, provided critical insights into her daily routines, habits, and likely paths. Their input helped investigators interpret witness accounts, validate timelines, and confirm the plausibility of reconstructed events. Their testimony also underscored the emotional stakes, reminding investigators and eventually jurors of the life and character behind the case. Investigators systematically considered alternative explanations for Vanessa's disappearance. Coincidence, misidentification, or error were explored and eliminated through cross-referencing witness accounts, forensic evidence, and reconstructed timelines. The combination of scientific analysis, eyewitness testimony, and meticulous reconstruction produced a coherent, compelling narrative that left little room for doubt. Detective Porter emphasized the importance of thorough documentation. Every note, every fiber, every statement mattered, she reflected. Even decades later, they formed the foundation for uncovering the truth. Her dedication exemplified the philosophy of the Cold Case Unit. Persistence, scientific rigor, and methodical analysis could bring justice to cases that seemed lost to time. By 2024, investigators had built a complete and verified case against Keith Monahan. Every aspect of Vanessa Caldwell's disappearance was reconstructed and corroborated. Physical evidence, eyewitness accounts, behavioral patterns, and Monahan's admissions combined to form a compelling, legally robust case. The groundwork was laid for prosecution, setting the stage for a trial that would finally resolve a nearly two-decade mystery. Vanessa's story, once shrouded in uncertainty, had been illuminated through the dedication of investigators, advances in forensic science, and community involvement. Preserved evidence carefully analyzed with modern technology transformed a cold case into a path toward justice. The narrative combined scientific accuracy with human impact, ensuring that her life and legacy remained central to the case. The reconstructed timeline, coupled with corroborated witness statements and physical evidence, provided a clear chronological sequence of events. This detailed reconstruction would later allow the jury to follow the investigation logically, understand the connections between suspect and victim, and see the culmination of decades of meticulous work. Through tireless work, the Cold Case Unit had not only identified a suspect, but had also verified the events surrounding Vanessa's disappearance. Every decision, every step in the investigation was aimed at preserving the integrity of the case, ensuring that when the courtroom proceedings began, justice could be served without compromise. Vanessa Caldwell's story serves as a reminder that even when a disappearance seems unsolvable, dedication, community vigilance, and the application of modern scientific techniques can eventually uncover the truth. The persistence of her family, friends, and investigators ensured that no detail was overlooked, and no lead went unexplored, ultimately bringing the case to the threshold of resolution. The Tulsa courthouse was tense, its walls heavy with decades of anticipation, grief, and hope. Families of other cold case victims, friends of Vanessa Caldwell, journalists, and local residents filled the benches, each awaiting a resolution that had been delayed for nearly 20 years. In the front row, Marlene and Stephen Caldwell clutched each other's hands, their faces etched with sorrow and determination. For almost 2 decades, they had lived with unanswered questions, and now, the long-awaited moment of accountability was at hand. The trial opened with the prosecution presenting Vanessa Caldwell not merely as a missing person, but as a vibrant, intelligent, and compassionate young woman whose life had been tragically interrupted. Witnesses described her dedication to law school, her volunteer work at literacy programs, and her mentorship of local youth. Jurors were reminded that this case was about the loss of a life, the grief it caused, and the perseverance of a family and community determined to find answers. Detective Hannah Porter detailed the reconstructed timeline of August 12, 2005. Vanessa had left her bookstore job at 7:30 p.m., heading toward her friend's home. Keith Monahan's confirmed presence in the area, verified through employment and utility records as well as corroborated witness statements, established opportunity. Visual aids illustrated her route, the locations of recovered forensic evidence, and Monahan's movements, giving the jury a clear understanding of the sequence of events. Forensic experts took the stand to explain how decades-old evidence was preserved and analyzed. Dr. Jonathan Hayes testified to fiber matches connecting Monahan's clothing to the alley behind the bookstore, hair fragments matching Vanessa's DNA, and fingerprints placing Monahan at critical locations. Each expert explained the scientific validity of modern forensic methods, showing how evidence preserved for nearly 20 years could definitively connect the suspect to the victim. Witnesses from 2005 were also brought in. The cafe employee described seeing a tall man near the alley behind the bookstore shortly after Vanessa left. A neighbor recalled a dark sedan parked nearby, its driver appearing to watch the building. Though the memories were faint and partially faded, consistency across multiple testimonies aligned with forensic findings, reinforcing Monahan's presence near Vanessa during the critical window. The defense attempted to question the reliability of decades-old memories and the integrity of preserved evidence. They argued that recollections could be flawed and that fibers or hair might have transferred innocently. The prosecution countered with meticulous documentation, independent verification of forensic evidence, and cognitive-enhanced witness testimony. Each objection was addressed, leaving the jury with a coherent and evidence-backed narrative. Marlene and Stephen Caldwell testified about Vanessa's daily routines, habits, and character. Marlene described her daughter's meticulous nature, her conscientiousness and predictable paths, while Stephen recalled her interactions within the community and her engagement with friends and neighbors. Their testimony emphasized that this case was about a person whose life had value and whose absence had left lasting grief. Behavioral analysis of Monahan was presented to provide context. Previous minor offenses, patterns of suspicious activity, and prior loitering incidents were used to explain tendencies that aligned with his presence near Vanessa. While not direct proof of guilt, these insights helped jurors understand how and why Monahan might have encountered her on that evening. The presentation of evidence was carefully orchestrated. Timelines, maps, and visual reconstructions illustrated how Monahan's movements intersected with Vanessa's path and correlated with the physical evidence collected. The combination of scientific testimony, eyewitness accounts, and visual aids provided a comprehensive, understandable case for the jury. Monahan's attempts to deny responsibility were systematically dismantled. Inconsistent statements from police interviews were confronted with corroborating forensic evidence. Fibers, hair, and fingerprints created a continuous link between him and Vanessa, leaving little doubt in the jury's mind about his involvement. After weeks of testimony, the jury began deliberations. They carefully reviewed forensic reports, timelines, maps, and witness statements, cross-referencing details to ensure their decision was informed and fair. Hours later, the foreperson read aloud, "We, the jury, find the defendant, Keith Monahan, guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping." The announcement was met with tears, relief, and a mixture of sorrow and vindication from the Caldwell family. For nearly 20 years they had endured uncertainty and pain, and now justice had finally been served. Friends and neighbors quietly celebrated, knowing that Vanessa's life and memory had been honored through perseverance and truth. The resolution of the case had ripple effects throughout the community. Local media highlighted the persistence of law enforcement, advances in forensic science, and the importance of preserving evidence. Memorial services and candlelight vigils honored Vanessa's life, emphasizing the contribution she had made and the dedication of those who refused to let her story fade. Marlene and Stephen Caldwell became advocates for cold case awareness and reforms. They spoke publicly about their experience, emphasizing the importance of preserving evidence, documenting details meticulously, and never losing hope. Their advocacy inspired other families of missing persons, demonstrating that persistence, patience, and the proper application of science could eventually illuminate truths thought lost. The Tulsa Police Department also learned from the case. Policies for evidence preservation, interagency cooperation, and systematic review of unresolved cases were strengthened. Vanessa Caldwell's case became a model for how cold cases could be reopened, meticulously re-examined and resolved, highlighting the critical role of modern forensic methods combined with dedicated investigative work. Vanessa's legacy extended beyond the courtroom. Scholarships, literacy programs, and mentoring initiatives were established in her memory, focusing on education and community service. Friends and family organized events to celebrate her life and contributions, ensuring that her story continued to inspire and impact others positively. The community, once shadowed by grief and uncertainty, now had a tangible symbol of hope and perseverance. Detective Hannah Porter reflected on the case. Time cannot erase the truth. Every note, every fiber, every witness statement mattered. This case proves that even decades-old mysteries can be solved, and justice can prevail through diligent science and unwavering commitment. Her words underscored the broader significance of the case, demonstrating the power of persistence, scientific advances, and community cooperation in bringing closure to cold cases. The streets of Tulsa, once silent witnesses to Vanessa's disappearance, now stood as symbols of resilience and justice. The collaborative effort between law enforcement, family, and community ensured that her memory was preserved and that the truth finally emerged. The long-delayed resolution brought closure not only to the Caldwell family, but also to a community that had endured the shadow of uncertainty for years. Decades of unanswered questions were replaced with clarity. The resolution of Vanessa Caldwell's case exemplified that patience, meticulous investigation, and modern forensic science could overcome time and uncertainty, ensuring that no crime, however old, remained unresolved. Families, investigators, and communities were reminded that persistent effort and dedication could ultimately illuminate even the most hidden pasts. Vanessa's story remains a testament to hope, resilience, and the enduring power of justice. Her life, her contributions, and the tireless efforts of those who refused to give up ensured that her story would inspire others to continue seeking truth, preserving memory, and holding perpetrators accountable. Through her legacy, the message is clear. Time may pass, but justice can prevail, and the lives of victims will never be forgotten.